Our guest tonight is top radio broadcaster and host of Coast to Coast AM, John B. Wills. He joins us in studio to talk about censorship in the media. Mr. Wills, it is indeed an honor to be sitting here with you, a great radio legend, somebody I aspire to be like one day.
It's kind of you to say that, and feelings mutual. Good to be here.
Thank you. All right, so you were on the Alex Jones radio show, and we heard the many topics that you wanted to talk about on that show, but I want to talk to you specifically about media censorship. We saw the situation when you were in Dallas, which you were with the InfoWars crew. So tell us just briefly about that experience.
I can tell you about that one. In fact, well, for many years, one of my clients was AHBLO Corporation, which at that time owned Channel 8 Television, the Dallas Morning News right across the parking garage, and an AM and an FM upstairs. And then they began to spin off those properties. The radio division went away first, and that left them with the TV station, the newspaper. And so that would be November 23rd, the Saturday right after the Friday 22nd Kennedy Memoriam. I just had to read the article in its entirety and point out how completely fraudulent it was, because the two staff writers had written it. And look, with sensitivity toward other human beings, I'm okay with all of that. But the fact is that the product that they produced was a complete misrepresentation of what actually happened. And I pointed out to the audience on Coast to Coast AM that I was there. And I know that there was nobody yelling profanity. Not at the Little Belo Park, not along the march. No one was obstructing traffic. And that when the Dallas police, to their credit, opened those barricades and said they can come in, and they started moving in, that's when the DHS with the
Dallas Sheriff's Department,
with the federalized Dallas Sheriff's deputies came in and started pushing people around. And I had left with a couple of fellas just a minute and a half before that happened, because it was like Ty said, "Hey, look, let's go. We've seen it. We saw Alex. Let's go ahead and go. I'm hungry." And his brother's like this really, I call him Big Bear. He's that big. He said, "Yeah, I'm hungry too. Let's go." And we're looking at each other like, "Really? We're going to leave?" It's like, "Yeah, we're done. The presentation's over. We'll go." So in the end, final analysis, I would say that's probably a good thing, because it upsets me to see women and getting pushed around and guys getting pushed around and children being jeopardized, particularly this one little girl who was on her dad's shoulders, and he's getting pushed, and she almost fell and could have busted her head open on the sidewalk. And then what?
Who would be held responsible? It would have been their fault for being there.
Well, I got a feeling that what would have happened is much like what happened in that old movie V for Vendetta, when the child was shot by this police officer, and that's when the citizenry turned on the police department. And if that had happened, then it might have been 1776 all over again, because I got a feeling if that child had been injured, I have a feeling that those men would have gone against the police officers, irrespective of whether or not they had their sidearms with them.
You bring up an interesting point there, and we'll get back to this media censorship, but you bring up this aspect of V for Vendetta, and that's something that's very popular. The Guy Fawkes persona is very popular with many young activists today. What is your thought about the whole, I guess you call it the anonymous movement, that type of activism?
To give you a cogent answer, I would just have to say that mostly it's the Alice in Wonderland thing, that nothing is but what is not. But if we are to take at face value the anonymous movement, take it at face value, I'm for it. And I'll tell you why. I mean, I want Edward Snowden to be the real thing. I don't want him to be a plant or some kind of an instrument being used to condition us toward one attitude or another. I want him to be real. Much the same way that people wanted Barack Obama to be real. They wanted this. So irrespective of whether he was or not, they still wanted it. And they want it even today. And they're willing to overlook what he does, which is, many times in flagrant violation of the Constitution of the U.S., doing these things, bypassing the legislature and just doing things by executive order. They're frankly
signing NDAA at midnight.
Well, yeah, and he's a Democrat, and yet Lindsey Graham and John McCain were right on board with that thing, declaring the United States, the 48 contiguous states, and then our two additional states, that are not contiguous with the other 48, the non-contiguous states, the battlefield. I mean, give me a break. What are they trying to tell us? So I agree with the anonymous movement. Now, do I like our national security compromised? I think our national security is already compromised. I think our national security has been compromised from the beginning. I'm beginning to think that in this day and age, and if somebody can show me that I'm wrong, then the moment that I'm shown to be wrong, I change my position. I analyze, I change my position, go, all right, well, if that's the case and I'm wrong, well, let me see how I can get straightened out here. But it's a charade. It's a mime. It's the Soviet intelligence services.
Are you concerned at all that maybe these groups may be infiltrated?
See, well, just to finish up on that other thought, the Soviet services and the NATO services, these guys know each other. They work with each other. Somebody spilled the beans on one of the History Channel programs that the Russians helped us get the titanium we needed to build the SR-71 Blackbird spy plane. So I think there's a lot more interaction between friends and foes than we think, because I believe it to be true that it is the financial interests which are the string pullers. They're the puppet masters. They're the ones who run it. And all this other stuff is the distraction that we in the public and as the citizenry have to deal with, which is why we have so much trouble sorting it all out. It makes no sense. If we're given a paradigm that this is the enemy, and you know who they are, you know what they look like, you know the uniform that they're wearing, okay, go get them. They're our enemy. But my dad said, when I asked him, since your father, my grandfather, predicted the war with Japan 10 years before it happened, what do you predict? And he said, well, that's the thing about the next one. You won't know who you're fighting. And my dad's words were very prophetic, because who are we fighting?